What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast with me, your host, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, October 22nd, and I'm taking your questions live. And we're going to dive right in here because we have questions and comments already in the chat because you guys are on top of it. And we have a lot to talk about here. Taking your questions. So anything you got, drop them in the chat. We're also going to talk about trade targets. But first, because someone got in and so kindly put in a chat first thing here and also a super chat. So thank you so much from NM4MZ. Hello, need a consult for a wide receiver 3 short and long-term pick and rank, please, between Coker, Shimray DK, Jaylen Noel, Kayshon Boutte, and Luther Burden. And thank you for the comment. Thanking you for saying that you appreciate my hard work. I really appreciate that. The positive comments make it all worth it. Thank you so much. I'm here to help, though. That's it. Let's answer the question. And I thought about this one before the show, actually, because I saw it before the show went live here. So I wanted to get them pre-ranked in order for you because short-term versus long-term. By the way, I love specific questions here. So we've got two angles on this one. Short-term, in those 5 receivers, we've got the order that I have them in is Kayshon Boutte, Jaylen Noel, Shimray DK, Jalen Coker, and then Luther Burden. That might seem a little surprising because you guys know that I like several names on this list here. And then long-term, the order that I have it in is also Kayshon Boutte first, then Jalen Coker, then Shimray DK, then Luther Burden, and then Jaylen Noel. But the big thing that I wanted to point out here is that the preference, both short-term and long-term here, is Kayshon Boutte for sure. We've talked about him a lot in waiver wire videos and stash videos here. We've been waiting. I have been waiting very diligently here for him to finally pop off, right? At some point, shows some kind of consistency in terms of looks from Drake May. He's been present on the field. He's been the wide receiver from the get-go. Oddly enough, that has had the most snaps in terms of presence on the field from the very beginning there. He popped in training camp. We knew right from the bat that he was going to have a starter role in this offense. And we've just been waiting for the volume to kind of trickle in here because Drake May has been fantastic, but he hasn't really been a particularly high volume quarterback, and he hasn't needed to. That's not a negative towards him. 1, excellent overall performances from New England. 2, he's been insanely efficient. He is throwing for a 75% completion rating, performing at such a high level there. When you're throwing for 75%, you don't have to chuck the ball and be throwing it out there 40, 50 times. So yeah, he's on a little bit of the lower end here. So it does make it a little bit more nervous for us when it comes to these receivers because we're looking for them to, get a couple of catches on this low volume here. But we also have the benefit of Kayshon Boutte being very reliable as a receiver. He has a catch rate of 85%. So when you combine that 75 with that 80%, it just makes it a situation where, okay, we don't need a massive amount of volume for him to pull through. Just give him 3-4 targets. He can get a couple of receptions. You get touchdown opportunities because he's been a nice little target here in the red zone over the past couple of games here. So we feel good about Kayshon Boutte at this point. So short-term and long-term, Kayshon Boutte is my preference there. Now, the big difference here in terms of that grouping right there, in terms of short-term versus long-term there, Jaylen Noel is a guy that pops up dramatically in terms of the short-term value here because we've got Christian Kirk dealing with his hamstring injury. And when I say short-term, it really could be beyond this week as well, because this is a re-injury that Christian Kirk has, which is an issue because when you re-injure those hamstrings, sometimes it takes you a little bit longer to work back here. So I'm not feeling super confident in Christian Kirk over the next couple of weeks here. We'll see. We'll get those practice reports in tomorrow and we'll kind of figure out where he's at. But again, not feeling super good about it. We've also got Nico Collins in concussion protocol. If for some reason he can't go as well, that opens up the door for more opportunities there. When you're looking at the rookies between Jaylen Noel and Jaden Higgins, they play 2 very different roles there. Higgins would obviously benefit more if Nico Collins is out just because Higgins is on the outside. But what comes along with that outside is kind of the volatility that we have been seeing as of recent, unfortunately, from Nico Collins. The Texans' offensive line is so bad that unfortunately sometimes it's tough to ball downfield because CJ Stroud doesn't have a ton of time. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, the more reliable receiver might just be the guy that is playing out of the slot there. So Jaylen Noel having that good opportunity in the absence of Christian Kirk. Chimere Dike sits in the middle here in terms of a guy that, dead set the number 3 in terms of short-term and long-term ranking here. I talked about him in the waiver wire video. Love him to death, honestly. He was a prospect that I fell in love with earlier when I was looking at when I was doing the Senior Bowl practices in the game. And he just popped in terms of looking at someone and thinking that he's got all the attributes in terms of excellent routes, good hands, good speed there that, can immediately translate into first-year production. So I'm not surprised that we saw him pop this week. Whether or not that is going to stick if Calvin Ridley is back, that's the big question. But we did get Tyler Lockett released, so that is a good sign of more increased playing time for him. So he kind of sits right in that middle range there. And then obviously Jalen Coker, I like long-term more than I do short-term. We need to see a ramp up. Obviously in that first week, we did see a lower snap count than we expected. I would have hoped that he would have been back a lot sooner, or he would have had a higher impact earlier, just because he had practiced in full for 2 weeks there. So I was thinking that we'd get a more significant impact from him, but maybe they're doing like a slower ramp up because he didn't play at all in preseason as well. And then coming in pretty much generally towards the end there in both short-term and long-term is unfortunately Luther Burden. Again, it's not him. Talent is good. Unfortunately, it's just that, unlike when we look at Drake May and Kayshon Boutte, the volume is lower for Drake May, but he is producing with it, incredibly efficient, and he's making the guys around him be able to produce. Unfortunately for Luther Burden, we're not seeing that translate with Caleb Williams. He's not throwing for a high amount of volume. He's not efficient, unfortunately. They're leaning heavily on the ground game with DeAndre Swift being fantastic and seeing Kyle Monongai pop up as well. So it literally is going to take an injury to either DJ Moore or Rome Odunze for Luther Burden to have any relevancy. The other guys, they've got relevancy right now because of either situation, starter, or injury. So unfortunately, that puts Luther Burden in the back. But I appreciate your question because that was a fun one. That was a good way to kick off the show right there. So thank you so much, NM4MZ, for the super chat and for the awesome question there. But moving on again, before I dive into the chat, and I see them coming in, so make sure that you are dropping those questions there. I did want to do one of our trade candidates here, and I want to talk about we'll start off positive here. We're not going to talk about my guy that's in the thumbnail because, spoiler alert, it's not a positive with Alvin Kamara. I am not pro by Alvin Kamara right now, unfortunately, but I am pro Jaylen Waddle. If you're looking for somebody to target here because we're in a dire situation with injuries and bye weeks, and I don't know about you guys, comment and let me know the type of guys that you're rolling out in your flex spots this week. But I've got one league, and it is a deeper league to be fair, but I've got one league where I am absolutely going to be relying on either Kyle Monongai, Rashard Smith, or Kenneth Gainwell. It is all handcuffs on deck because of the injuries and bye weeks that we have, unfortunately, here. So if you're looking for someone to make a trade for right now to get you by, Jaylen Waddle is a very interesting one. Obviously, Miami is a complete mess, right? And I'm a little shocked that we have not seen the firing of Mike McDaniel. Maybe Miami, I don't know if they qualify for an extremely well-run team at this point, but maybe they just want to carry this out and see it through the end of the season, and hopefully that Mike McDaniel can help them tank and get a potential first overall pick there. They've got a lot of competition with the New York Jets, so I don't know if they're going to get there though. But it is a bad situation, unfortunately, at Miami. But the good situation there for us from a fantasy perspective is that their defense is so bad that it puts the offense in good situations. Now, last week was not a good display of that, but the reasoning for that not being a good display is because it was a bad matchup. Cleveland's defense is for real. We know that. Unfortunately, if you are not a very competent quarterback, you can't attack them if you're a skilled quarterback. But Tua doesn't have that consistency, and then you tie in the bad weather as well. It was just a bad situation. And then apparently he was talking about in the media that he couldn't see over the line. I don't know if I would have said that. He should have kept that to himself. Maybe they should, pull him away from the mic potentially there. But unfortunately, fortunately for us, that does open up the window there for us to potentially buy low on Jaylen Waddle. When you look at that receiving core, I posted a short today about Darren Waller. It was fun while it lasted. Thank you, Darren Waller, for the good times, but they won't be continuing this season. Maybe he'll be back at some point, but it's the Darren Waller story, right? Pops, makes us feel good, and then dips off to IR. So when we're looking at that receiving core and the pass catchers in general, it's Jaylen Waddle. It's Jaylen Waddle who is going to continue to have the hefty targets from Tua Tagovailoa. And obviously Devon Achane is really the only main reliable fantasy asset outside of Jaylen Waddle. But when you're looking at that and the defense being bad, the rest of season schedule, not a major issue. And quite frankly, a playoff schedule that has Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay. 2 of those are extremely pass-friendly matchups. And then the Steelers have shown that they can be a pass-friendly matchup as well, providing decent volume to opposing quarterbacks, especially with the way that Aaron Rodgers is dealing. You have to chase points against them as well because they're putting up numbers there with the run game as well. So when we're looking at that from that perspective, Jaylen Waddle is absolutely someone who is coming off of a bad game. So he's a good buy low here. There's a perception of the potential firing there of Mike McDaniel. But regardless of who is the head coach there, interim, if there is a firing in the near future, I'm all in on Jaylen Waddle from a volume perspective there. So that's a nice little cheap buy that you can get of a guy who, as long as the matchup is not dreadful, is going to give you legitimate top 20 upside on a weekly basis there. So jumping to the chat here, because we have a lot here and I don't want to fall behind. And we had a lot put in early as well. So thank you very much there. From Nate Bonenfant. Baker at quarterback, and then Jacobs/Taylor at QB, Baker at quarterback, Jacobs and Taylor at running back, and then Ladd and Rashee Rice at wide receiver. Kittle at tight end. Who do I put in my flex? My options are Vidal, Gadsden, Andrews, or I could put in a claim on a Darnell Mooney or Keon Coleman type. Is stacking Ladd and Vidal a bad idea? Trying to get through the Seattle Seahawks and the Rams bye week. Yeah, I've got one team where I am overly invested in the Rams, and that's the team I was talking about that I'm going to have to roll out back at running backs at my flexes because I am Rams out in that league. So unfortunately, it's a rough bye week for me there. So I get it. I know. So Andrews, I don't trust. Gadsden coming off of the big game. I know it feels appealing to lean into that one. I do approach that one with a little, I trust him and I love him. We've talked about him before. He was one of my favorite tight end prospects. So, and lots of recommendations for him. So this is not anything new, but there is volatility there and there's safety in Vidal. So while hitting twice with the Chargers might feel a little icky in terms of diversification, the good news is that we have Hassan Haskins, who is going to be out in this game. So at least you are, in theory, getting a very limited amount of competition for carries there for Vidal. So while going with both of the Chargers might not seem ideal, because we know there's a certain level of volume that Vidal is going to get, I'm perfectly okay with that rather than going and hoping that Mooney can have a good game there or that Keon Coleman can pop off. I would rather stick it out with Vidal because you've got a nice floor, probably of around 10 fantasy points there. Moving on to and thank you there from Nate as well. I appreciate that. And yes, Darren Waller and his one-hit wonder appearance there. Thank you so much. From Abreu, 68. Full PPR, flex worthy, or Ferguson? Ooh, that is a good question there. Because if you had asked that last week, all of us, most people would have said just go ahead and go with worthy, right? But after last week's performance, of clearly Rashee Rice coming in. That's not surprising because I had Rashee Rice ranked over Xavier Worthy last week, but I didn't know the separation was going to be that dramatic. Rashee Rice was the clear target hog. There wasn't a ton of volume in terms of yardage, but touchdowns, red zone opportunities. It was clear that Patrick Mahomes was just very locked in right there. And we know that Xavier Worthing is playing through an injury, unfortunately. So I do think that's affecting him as well. And then we saw Jake Ferguson with CeeDee Lamb returning and CeeDee being awesome. Jake Ferguson was still amazing. We thought there would be a downturn in production for him because obviously we know that he still has a very trustworthy floor when CeeDee is in. We saw it earlier in the season, but I wasn't expecting this level of production with CeeDee Lamb back from him. But quite frankly, and then you're saying also you could pick up Kamara, Pollard, or Marks. And then your defense would be question is Atlanta or Cleveland. I still lean towards going with Ferguson over Worthy on that one. I know it might feel weird, but tight end and flex always feels weird. but the upside that he has shown is just so extreme there. And at running back, picking two between Kamara, Pollard, and Marks. Marks is the one that I trust, and we can talk about him a little bit here because I do think he's an interesting potential trade candidate as well. Because someone might be looking to sell high-ish, right, off of this game, being better than it was, being better performance than it was than the Baltimore situation. I do believe that Woody Marks is going to remain the most reliable fantasy productive back in that Houston backfield. What we saw in that week 5 matchup between Baltimore and Houston, that I think was more indicative of that game being a blowout very quickly and the Texans offense just trying to, one, maybe reduce workload a little bit because they increased garbage time production for Dameon Pierce. Obviously, he disappeared this past week, so we know that was the case there. And then also maybe just trying to split and experiment and see what they still have in Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. So when we're talking about games where they are very competitive or the Texans are playing from behind, I genuinely believe that Woody Marks has the higher upside there. And in this matchup right here, this is a game where I do think that San Francisco has the ability to jump out on them at a little bit early there. So I lean towards starting Marks and then Kamara in this one. Kamara was very underwhelming, right? Unfortunately, in his production this past week, despite the fact that Kendre Miller got injured fairly early. So the vast majority of the workload should have favored Alvin Kamara, and he wasn't productive. So I am high-key concerned, and we're going to take a break here in a little bit, and I'll talk about Kamara when we return there. But for your RBs, I would definitely go with Kamara and Marks there. Pollard, there's just a limited upside. It's a split backfield. It's 1A, 1B with him and Tajay Spears. And quite frankly, I think it'll flip on a weekly basis there. So I don't think the ceiling is there for him. And the floor is, it's okay-ish, but it's not giving you the pop that you really want there. And then on defense between Atlanta and Cleveland, I always like to go to my rankings on defense just to make sure, because I never have defense top of mind unless it's a clear, like the number one spot that I have that week. But I have Cleveland right now as my 15th ranked defense and Atlanta as my 7th ranked defense. While I do think that this is a matchup, well, Atlanta has been very good about limiting overall pass volume there. So I'm not, while I do think Tua could have a little bit of a bounce back here, I don't think that massively throwing on them and creating a fantasy issue there is going to be a problem for us. Also, he's good for turnovers as well. Even if he throws for 300, he can also throw for 3 interceptions. So go with the Atlanta defense there. And then let's do one more before we go to break here from Henry Odom. Can I show it, or is my computer running slow? My computer's running slow. All right. Well, Henry Odom asks, what tight end would you recommend this week between Schultz and, okay, there it is. Between Schultz and Cade Otton. So between that grouping right there, Dalton Schultz was reliable in this past matchup, and especially with the potential of Nico Collins being out, that does increase the opportunity. But I feel more solid with Cade Otton. We know that Godwin's going to be out, and unfortunately, we're done for the majority of our fantasy season. Maybe he'll return in like championship week, but Mike Evans, for the most part, is done for us, unfortunately, there. So Cade Otton, the role that he has, and quite frankly, Tez Johnson as well in that offense. You guys know I like Tez a lot. But Cade Otton has the ability to pop when we've seen it before in prior years, like last year when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were out. Baker Mayfield heavily relied on Cade Otton. So this is not an anomaly or a random thing. We can look back to last year and see that if the receivers are out, he locks in and hyper targets on Cade Otton. So Otton is the one that I trust the most there. But we are going to take a really quick break here. And we will hear a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back shortly. Let's see here. Which one am I picking? Make sure I do the right ad, but we'll be right back shortly after this.
Oh, working out so important for your health, for your sex life, for everything, just everything in general. I perform better across the board, podcasting, you name it. The last thing I need to be thinking about is, creating a new workout routine. That's why we have FITBOD. It prevents you from plateauing. It's so customizable in that I have one super strong shoulder and one kind of weak shoulder. And yet the FitBod app helps me customize my workouts to improve the strength and the endurance. I go in, my physical therapist is like, I can't believe you're doing this many. And I'm like, I know. Can you believe this? And he's like, yeah, this is crazy. So level up your workouts. They have over 1,000 demonstration videos. And join FitBod today to get your personalized workout plan, which includes 25% off, or try the app for free for 7 days. Go to fitbod.me/player, fitbod.me/player, FITBOD/player for 25% off for 7 days free.
And we are back. All right, guys. Let's see here. Before we move on to some more questions here, real quick. I did want to talk quickly because I mentioned Alvin Kamara. I did want to talk really quickly about Alvin Kamara. He's not a buy. He's a popular buy. I've seen him floated around as, someone to potentially invest in with the injury to Kendre Miller there. Unfortunately, I cannot advocate for that. I think it's actually a good opportunity to sell him. At this point, the amount of additional workload that he can get from Kendre Miller gone, and we aren't actually really even guaranteed that he will get that additional workload at this point, unfortunately, just because we do have Devin Neal there. I do not put it past them to try to give him a decent amount of carries, maybe not a significant amount, but a decent amount so that they don't have Alvin Kamara in there significantly. We have to also remember that Taysom Hill is still there. And while Taysom Hill is not going to take a bunch of carries, he does tend to take those goal line opportunities as well. So if we've got Alvin Kamara, we're not getting enough checkdowns, not enough receiving work there. The potential sniping of Taysom Hill at the goal line, unfortunately, the math just doesn't add up for a ton of upside here. So I do fear that Alvin Kamara is someone who personally I think we should all be selling, trying to take advantage of this potential boost in interest in the trade market with Kendre Miller out for the year and selling him off rather than making an investment to him when he's shown such limited upside this year, unfortunately. I'm going to go to the chat here real quick. And from Shorty, thank you for the super chat. Trade suggestions in your league that hardly ever has any trade. PPR, 2 flex. Team is May, Dart, Jacobs, Irving, White, Benson, Monongai, Isaiah Davis, JSN, Jamar Chase, McMillan, DJ Moore, Booty, Noel, Warren, and Tucker Kraft as well. So, with the disparity or the disparity that we have at quarterback here, I would hold on to both your guys just because we're getting extremely, with all the injuries that are happening and the changings and the benchings of Justin Fields and whatnot, we're getting to the point where our best streaming option on waivers is Joe Flacco. So I am a wee bit fearful of selling off any of your assets at quarterback at this point, unless you can get a hefty amount for them. But when we're looking at the running backs there with Jacobs, Irving, White, so you've got the combination there, so you're safe. Wouldn't sell off either one of those. Benson, Monongai, Isaiah Davis. Potentially, you might be able to sell on Isaiah Davis if you can, talk to someone about the trade potential of Breece Hall and the upside there. And then at wide receiver, you've got Chase, McMillan, DJ Moore, Kayshon Boutte, and you're good there. But what I would try to trade for is a third more reliable or higher upside, higher ceiling guy at wide receiver, because you've got Chase with the extreme upside that's going to carry you. McMillan, safe floor, the upside, it comes and goes there. And then DJ Moore has been very modest in his production there. You've got some potentials, but honestly, trading potentially one of these up-and-coming running backs in Isaiah Davis or Kyle Monongai and trying to take a chance on a wide receiver too that could maybe give you a bit more pop in terms of being a guy that you could place over DJ Moore, I think that's the best route for you to go. We've also got the dual tight end there if you maybe wanted to potentially sell Tucker Kraft and just roll with Tyler Warren rest of season. That's an opportunity as well. So that's the approach I would take with any of your trades. You're trying to get stronger at wide receiver. You're good at running back. Hold on to those quarterbacks and maybe potentially sell one of those tight ends. Yeah, I think that's the best route for you. And then from Tony Brown as well, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate you. With Nico hurt, Darnell Mooney, Golden, Downs on your bench. Who do you replace Nico with if he can't go? So Downs probably is the most reliable and potentially high ceiling option of that grouping. Again, we need him to come back from the concussion. I don't think we've got the official clear for him yet. Let me double check and see if we've got any kind of update in terms of his availability right now. Limited at Wednesday practice. Okay, that's not bad. That's a good sign. Yeah, so we might be able to get you going on him, and it's a good matchup with Tennessee. He's been steadily increasing. We wish we had a little bit more upside there, but he did come off of that good matchup against Arizona, got a touchdown in that one. So for me, it's between Josh Downs and Matthew Golden. Darnell Mooney, again, is a little, we've seen the high ceiling from him in the past last year, but not this year, unfortunately, and not in combination with Michael Penix is the other issue there that I am concerned about, that maybe they just don't have that chemistry that we saw between Darnell Mooney and Kirk Cousins last year. Wrong Kirk/Kurt there. But Matthew Golden also, I don't mind this matchup here. We're going to get some good volume back and forth. And again, that's a Thursday game. So it's a Sunday night game. So you'll be able to know ahead of time whether or not Josh Downs is going to be available. So I would hold off and lean towards playing Josh Downs. If anything goes wrong, Matthew Golden is the direction that I would go. He's been reliable. Last week was very disappointing in terms of it, not being as high volume as we like. But in this matchup, I am expecting more pass volume from Jordan Love. So I do think we could possibly see some upside there from him. And then from Arav Aji, thank you for the super chat. Pick one flex and one tight end between Fannin, Kittle, Devontae, and Quentin Johnston. So on that one, between Fannin and Kittle, so Kittle, that production and lack thereof being zero production, that was highly frustrating, right? But at the end of the day, he is George Kittle, and we still have to go back to him. Even though Fannin has been more reliable, we did have David Njoku return to practice, so that potentially affects his volume as well. So I definitely lean towards Kittle on that one. I know the zero was frustrating. Technically speaking, the guys after the game said that it was going to be a heavy Christian McCaffrey game. It would have been cool if we had known that going in, but I guess they can't spoil the entire game plan. But hey, it is what it is. Kittle was out there. He's healthy. It's not an issue of, hey, they were still ramping him up. No, it wasn't that. It was just that primarily he was out there blocking because, again, their run game has struggled significantly. The offensive line has been a little bit underwhelming there. So Kittle coming back and helping out from a blocking perspective is what they really called upon to help get that run game going. I would expect more targets to Kittle as we move forward here. So feel a little bit more comfortable with it. And then between the wide receivers there for flex, and you could technically go Fannin and flex, but again, Njoku back kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in that. But I would still stick with Devontae. We're in a matchup again where in this matchup, we can look back to week 6 because it literally just happened between the Eagles and Philadelphia. It wasn't a big game from Devontae Smith. It wasn't a bust by any means. I think it was around 8 fantasy points. The bigger game was obviously from Dallas Goedert. AJ Brown had a fine game as well. But I do think that when you're looking at these rematches, they don't often play out exactly the same way because coaches starting to get into gamesmanship. So this could be a situation where AJ had the better game in the first matchup and we see Devontae have the better game in the second matchup because of adjusted coverages there. So Devontae is still in play, even though his production wasn't fantastic in the first matchup, especially coming off this game where, again, they really got the pass game going and it worked out well there. So that's my lean there for that question. So thank you so much. for the awesome question. Heading back here, let's see, to Owen. Yeah, we haven't done your question, Owen. Let's do your question there. What do you think of Christian Watson, Chris Godwin, and Trey Benson as a stash? Need one in 1 point PPR, all three available on waivers. My preference there is definitely Benson. Christian Watson, I'm a Packers fan. I love him, but it's been a while since we have seen consistent upside from him, like literally like the end of his rookie season, unfortunately. So when we're looking at it from that perspective, I do have concerns, unfortunately, around his upside. Again, I love Matthew Golden. Ultimately, I think that in an ideal world, he can push past Christian Watson fairly easily in terms of reliability. And then at some point, we'll have Jayden Reed back. So Watson is a fine stash, but comparatively with Benson, I want the guy that I believe will come back and be the RB1. And unlike Amari and Hampton, who it sounds like his injury could extend past the 4-week minimum of IR, we weren't really getting that kind of news with from Arizona regarding Trey Benson. It didn't seem like they were trying to make any moves to a running back or anything. So feel confident that Benson is going to come back soon and then would step into the RB1 role there. That's what they drafted him for. Remember, he was a high draft pick. They vocally were trying to make him the heir apparent to James Conner. He was splitting carries with Conner before the injury to Conner. So there's confidence there in him. That's the future of the franchise at running back. So Benson is the guy that I would go with there. Let's do some shout outs here. What's up to Amazon Pancakes? What's up to Mar? Thank you guys. Thank you for coming back. From Amazon Pancakes, thoughts on Egbuka's new hamstring aggravation. I wish I could give a solidified opinion on it, but he kind of, surprised me there, even playing on Monday night. I really didn't expect that at all from him. So it's going to have to be a situation where we're, again, playing it by ear with him, unfortunately, because he showed the ability to turn around. Now, most of the time we know hamstring injuries, you're usually out that same week, right? They don't have to be long-term, right? We saw Quentin Johnston miss one game and then come back. So I wouldn't be too panicked. He is young, and that does help, right, in terms of the hamstrings being less detrimental. So we got to monitor it, pay attention to the practice reports, but also know that, unfortunately, there is a strong possibility that we could get him not practicing all week, but then be ready to go on Sunday. It is a Sunday game, at least. It's not a Monday night game, thank God here, but it is a Sunday afternoon game. So keep that in mind. But we don't have to worry about it right now. From Tony Brown, Nico, we did that one. Let's see here. From Kai, Woody Marks or Chubbs to start? Yeah, on that one, it's Woody Marks for me. Woody Marks for me for sure. From Jay Kuma, full PPR, pick up Godwin or Tez Johnson. Ooh, yeah. Godwin or Tez Johnson, rest of season drop. DJ Moore for BTJ was just dropped. And then also Addison or Waddle this week. Thank you for the info. Thank you for watching. Jay, that's also my brother's name is Jay, by the way. So thank you for watching. Between Godwin and Tez Johnson, the pickup there for me, it is Tez. I feel a little high-key concerned about this injury from Godwin. We don't have any kind of timeline. We don't have any kind of, fine details in terms of the injury. So when I hear ambiguous injuries, I don't have specific timelines. Like if you give me a collarbone and you say 8 weeks, okay, that's cool. I understand. Could be 8 weeks. Maybe it comes a little bit back early there. It's very defined. If you say a high ankle sprain, I'm like, okay, cool. 4 weeks. Got it. Understand. Maybe it's not a highly severe one and he can come back in 2 weeks, something like that. Right. But when it comes to Chris Godwin's injury, we don't have any kind of timeline to work off here. So yeah, I would go ahead and pick up Tez Johnson on that one because I'm concerned that this injury from Godwin might be a little bit more long-term than we would like to see. Then rest of season, dropping DJ Moore for BTJ, just drop. Yes, I would. And also trade candidate. BTJ is potentially a little buy low for me here because I think the value has bottomed out on him, unfortunately. When we're looking at Brian Thomas Jr., we had some hope there. We finally saw, and here's the good news, right? In terms of him being a buy low here. It's risky, right? Because one, he's on a bye week. He did appear to get injured at the end of the game. So that means that we ultimately can't know anything about his injury because when players get injured before the bye week, They don't have practices, so we don't know any kind of details in terms of how they're feeling. So we're just kind of going on a whim that it wasn't that serious here. But because of the combination of the injury, because of the fact that Travis Hunter had that breakout game, and then because of the fact that we have just been underwhelmed significantly by him all season, and then you add on the skepticism around Trevor Lawrence there, it's just the perfect combination for him, and you see from Jay saying that someone literally just dropped him, obviously in frustration there, and with the bye week had to make desperate moves there. So yeah, Jay, absolutely pick him up and drop DJ Moore. DJ Moore's ceiling is kind of toast there, unfortunately, in Chicago. We talked about it earlier. Caleb Williams is just not effective. We talked about it when we were talking about Luther Burden. Caleb Williams has just not been effective in terms of volume. Efficiency hasn't been fantastic. And then the ball is being spread around fairly evenly. We're not even getting high ceilings for Rome Odunze. The production has been massively underwhelming. No one is thriving in the pass game, and that's because the run game is thriving. Shout out to DeAndre Swift. That one surprised me a little bit. I'm not going to lie on that. I did not expect Swift to have this level of a turnaround. He is thriving in this offense, which, hey, he's thrived in this offense in the past. This isn't new territory for him, but he just hadn't looked awesome over the past couple of years here. So this is a good turnaround to see from him. So they're able to rely on the run game. We talked about Kyle Monongai, his snaps creeping up. They're simply increasing volume on the ground. Like, they're not, in them giving more snaps to Kyle Monongai, they're not decreasing anything for DeAndre Swift. They're just leaning on the ground game more because those guys are awesome. They're strong pass catchers as well. So unfortunately, that just puts the receivers in a bad position. So dropping DJ Moore at this point is very understandable, especially for a guy like BTJ, who we know has a high ceiling. We saw it in week 6. He had 90 yards and a touchdown, and we felt like, hey, we're finally back to the BTJ that we saw at the end of last season. But down game, it's okay. This is a good time to invest on the low here. And then also Addison or Waddle this week. Addison has been so incredibly reliable. It's tough to sit him, but I do have to go with Waddle over him just based on a volume play there. Addison always makes me kind of nervous when I know he's going to pull through. I know Jordan Addison is going to pull through, but watching the games with Jordan Addison and rostering Jordan Addison always feels a little panicky because of the way that his production comes. Shout out to Morgan Grimes, our producer here in the chat, from Edward Waters. Hi there. Good to see you. From Twitter. Lots of conversations with you. Jaylen Waddle or Troy Franklin. Yeah, I like. So I'm actually going to talk about I'm going to talk about Troy Franklin in a video that I'm going to put out tomorrow as a fun little start this week. So it is closer between the two than you would think, because Franklin has that incredible matchup with Dallas. And so I actually think he and Marvin Mims have a lot of upside for streaming options. If anyone needs, some lower end flex options that have really high upside this week, those two right there are key. But I would still go with Jaylen Waddle. Again, attributing a lot of that pain that we got in terms of the production last week to the bad weather there from Tua. Struggling in that bad weather there. Let's see. From Black Lion, just got offered Barkley for my Sutton and Jordan Mason. Ooh. You have Jefferson, Addison, London as your other wide receivers, and then your only other starting running back is Javonte Williams. Yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And I like Jordan Mason because I do think that even though Aaron Jones could return this week. I don't know if it'll be this week. Again, guys get activated off of IR. They might miss an additional week. You never know. Once the practice window is opened up, it's not always immediate there. But I still like Jordan Mason as the lead back in terms of early down work and goal line work, even with Aaron Jones. It's what we saw earlier in the season. So I'm not panicked on Jordan Mason because I think long-term he's going to have, continued stable value there. But yeah, that's an appropriate trade right there to acquire Saquon Barkley, and that really solidifies you up there. Saquon has been underwhelming, but I do think that he's a good buy low because there's lots of people trying to sell on him right now, and you're able to swoop in there and not have to pay an extreme price. So I like that trade for you for sure. What's up, Gwen P? 12-man half PPR team is Caleb Williams, Saquon Barkley, Brock Bowers, Quinshon Judkins, T. Higgins, BTJ, Tet McMillan, Laporta, Loveland, Pearsall, Denver's defense, Boswell, and then the bench is Tez, Henderson, Gainwell, Bashal Tootin, Ollie in 3 and 4. Well, you're still in a prime spot here. At least here's a good thing. You're 3 and 4, but you have 3 wins with the way that Saquon and BTJ and technically McMillan has been a little shaky as well. So, and NT as well, finally popping off, but obviously the struggles before here. So the fact that you've got 3 wins on that, you've been grinding. So feel no shame in that, especially with Brock Bowers being injured. Ricky Pearsall is another frustrating one, man. That one hurts. They didn't put him on IR. We knew it would potentially be a multi-week injury there, but it's verging on multi weeks here. So I'm like, come on, Kyle Shanahan, give us something. And it doesn't appear that he is going to be back. So that is very frustrating that he potentially won't be back this week here. But looking at this team right here, with Judkins, you've got a lot of guys that are potentially on the upswing here in terms of Judkins. T. Higgins for one. BTJ on the bye week is bad there. And then McMillan will be interesting in terms of how he meshes with Andy Dalton. I might try right there to potentially trying to think of a trade that you could do that would work. But one thing is for sure, I'm not opposed to heading to waivers and potentially dropping of the running backs. I would drop probably Henderson is the one that I would drop of that grouping, and maybe picking up another quarterback that can give you some higher upside there than Caleb Williams. That's the one that is very frustrating for us, unfortunately. Caleb Williams has just been underwhelming. We thought, and despite the problem is that the Chicago defense has been bad, so it should be a situation of pushing aggressive volume. But unfortunately there, we just haven't gotten, that production out of him. Now, I will say this week is a good matchup here against Baltimore. So you can go with him and potentially expect higher upside here, especially if Lamar Jackson is tracking towards being healthy here, playing this week. We get a nice back and forth there. This is a week that I feel like all of your players can maybe align here. And also with Colston Loveland, maybe getting a boost in production here with Cole Kmet out. Keep your eye on that. When we're not starting him, I would still, you're okay with starting him this week because you do not have Laporta this week, unfortunately. So you'll be in a good situation where Loveland, you can play him and potentially have some upside this week in this matchup here. So all hope is not lost. And you might want to actually look at flexing Tez Johnson over Tet McMillan. I'll have to think about that one there. But again, we're a little bit worried about the injury situation there with Bryce Young and just how well there's going to be this chemistry between Andy Dalton and Tet McMillan. So yeah, I could potentially maybe go that direction of trying to hit that higher upside play with Tez. Just try and get a little bang for your buck there, but we can work it out. We can work it out here, depending on, we'll work out your lineup. It'll happen. Don't worry. You can turn things around here. There's still good bones. I don't think that there are any massive issues with this roster. From Marvin Tolbert, new subscriber here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you so much. Don't know if I talked about Ray to the Giants. Any thoughts there? I have not talked about that. Obviously, I always point the wrong way. I do love Ray McLeod. I can never point correctly in the camera at my little Clemson stuff in the background there. That's one of my main flaws that I do every single week without fail there. But Ray McLeod to the Giants is interesting for sure because they did it quickly, and that makes sense. It also tells you that maybe the fact that they did it so quickly is interesting because I know a lot of people were thinking that, in terms of potential trade candidates, Jakobi Meyers would potentially be a good fit there, although technically his skill set does, because he's a slot guy, so technically it does overlap a little bit with Wan'Dale, although Wan'Dale can play on the outside and so can Jakobi. But Wan'Dale can play very well on the outside. We've seen him thrive as a deep threat there. But Ray McLeod going there is interesting because we did see, obviously, the week before we had a pop there from little Jordan Humphrey. Unfortunately, it did not come to any kind of meaningful fantasy production this past week for us. So he's obviously not someone that we can rely on. So in deeper leagues, I do think it's interesting because they have a clear hole in their offense. Ray is a versatile guy. So there's potential there for him to be a contributor, to grab him in deeper leagues and see what happens. I don't know how quickly he'll be able to get up to speed, whether or not they'll play him immediately this week or not. But they are desperate at wide receiver. So I would not be shocked if he came into immediate significant playing time there. And Jackson Dart, we know, you guys know, love him here as well. From Mar, do you think Monongai will be successful? Will successfully be... Yeah, I feel good about Monongai. Do I think, I don't know what I'm missing with the typo here, but yes, I feel good about Monongai on in general here. Again, when we're looking at that Chicago offense, they're thriving on the ground. The run blocking is successful. I think they're going to continue to lean into it. We see positive upticks in production from Monongai on a weekly basis. And it is critical to know that while some of that production was a little bit of garbage time production, he's been involved consistently very early in the games here. He got a carries on the second drive in this past matchup. His touchdown came in the second quarter, so it was not him getting a touchdown at the end of the game in a blowout situation. The production is meaningful there, for sure. Shout out to Blessed for today. Thank you for watching. Yeah, how close is Monongai to being the Monty in the Bears backfield? And then any news on Kareem Hunt's injury? So I don't know. So the way that they've used Monongai in tandem with DeAndre Swift, it seems like it's not more of a early down. It wouldn't be more of a split where because Monongai can be a power back like at the goal line and stuff, but I don't think they intend to use him that way. I think they see him as a very versatile player because he has receiving upside as well. So we've seen him involved in pass catching. So I think they're using him more as just like a drive relief from DeAndre Swift, which is good because that means that he can be in on a single drive and get that opportunity and not be brought in just for a specific situation or for passing downs or for goal line opportunities or anything, just really kind of put into a box there. So yeah, I think we are getting close to not that this is going to be a split backfield, that we are going to see enough value from Monongai to potentially have production that we can rely on him on a weekly basis there. And then on Kareem Hunt's injury, no news on that one because he did come back in the game and kind of try to play through it a little bit. But one thing that I do want to point out there with Kareem Hunt is that the lack of carries that he had, I don't think that was just the injury. We've seen for the past couple of weeks a decrease in production from him, and we've seen increases in touches for Isaiah Pacheco every single week. So I think, and I cross my fingers, and we've also been seeing the increase in touches for Brashard Smith as well, and not just in the garbage time production as well. So when I'm looking at that, I feel like the possibility exists for Kareem Hunt to really be reduced. So we're going to have to play this one by ear here. But in terms of the backs in that backfield that I trust the most and think have the most upside long-term, I think we might be on the cusp of feeling comfortable with Isaiah Pacheco as a low-end RB2 and then a low-end flex value from Brashard Smith, particularly in PPR. And maybe Kareem Hunt might be the odd man out here. And then from Gwen P, needs opinions, possible trade stacks, or drop some of these handcuffs. Need a QB, Caleb after last week. I can't take him. Then added Tez instead of Flacco. Only lady in your league won the ship last year. Oh, congrats on that. Nice. I still think you can turn it around. I think you did make the right move in adding Tez and not Flacco. But I will say, I think you should, now that I have molded over in my head, I do think you should start Caleb Williams one more week. I know it's frustrating, but the matchup is really good here. I just give it one more week on him, especially because you can stack it there at tight end with Colston Loveland as well. So give it one more week there on him. I know it's frustrating, but I think he can pull through for you this week. From G Santos, try to get Kyren for Scat. That's an even trade. I don't mind it. I would like if you said the opposite, I would be fine with it. Kyren is very reliable, and Skattebo is interesting because I don't think that Tyrone Tracy, the touchdown that he got was a random breakaway run there. Other than that, the production was very minuscule there. But I'm okay with getting Kyren for Skattebo. I think that's a fine trade. From Jay Kuma, Jackson Dart, or Caleb Williams this week and rest of season in another league, Superflex, Flacco or Rodgers. So in Superflex, I do have Rodgers above Flacco. It's his revenge game, right? It's our little matchup of the week here. Going against the Packers, and he wants to show off against Jordan Love here. His volume hasn't been super high, right? And unfortunately, that probably has a lot to do with the lack of receiving options. But and I know that people in general are kind of fearful of the Packers defense, but the Packers defense, aside from obviously that first matchup against the Detroit Lions, it's been okay. It hasn't been fantastic, right? I don't think it's a shutdown defense. It still has some room to improve there. So Rodgers still has good value this week. I've got him as a top. He's my QB 14 right now, and that is pretty much on line with consensus there. Flacco, I think, is fine in terms of, obviously when you're throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you're always going to be fine there. But the matchup is interesting. The Jets defense has turned things around. They do have Sauce Gardner that's in concussion protocol, so perhaps that opens up things for him. But I do prefer Rodgers this week. And then between Jackson Dart and Caleb Williams this week and rest of season, this week and rest of season, I have Jackson Dart higher in both. The reasoning for that is, again, the rushing upside that we have seen from Jackson Dart has just been incredible. Last week, he had the rushing yardage reduced significantly. He did get the touchdown. That is not abnormal. That's just what Denver does. Denver quarterbacks typically just don't run very well on Denver from a defensive perspective. But on a weekly basis, the way that they utilize Dart, the rushing upside that he has, it just gives him constant QB1 upside. The fact that he put out that level of performance and was able to push a little bit higher volume, get to nearly 300 yards in that matchup because he had to, I feel good about him rest of season. I do trust him as a QB1 moving forward. From Nate Bonenfant, yeah, you think you're going to ride with the McConkey Vidal stack on the Thursday night famous last words. I trust Justin Herbert to properly give us a good Thursday night game. I am starting Justin Herbert this week, so we'll see how that goes. From Nay DZ, is it worth trying to get Bucky concerned about the vagueness of his injury? Yeah, and that's the exact same thing that I was talking about with Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin. They've been very vague about a couple of injuries here, and I don't feel super comfortable with it. If you can get him on the cheap, I don't mind it, but at the very least, we know he's going to be out next week. So just realize that if you're grabbing him, it might be because only do so if you have a winning record. You're pretty much locked in for the playoffs, and you're trying to grab him as that last little piece that's going to give you high upside there. So, yeah, I've got concerns around the vagueness of his injury as well. From Burkham, we'll try and pick up speed here a little bit because we're closing in on the hour here. From Burkham, pick two between Otten, Pitts, Andrews rest of season. Definitely Otten and Pitts. Unfortunately, not Andrews on that one. Sorry, Mark Andrews. From Bob Hope, Keenan, Dobbs, also Pitts and Fannin. PPR, thank you. I would go with Keenan over Dobbs. I do want to hit the ceiling on there. I know occasionally the floor has become a little underwhelming over the past couple of games prior to the last one. But we got a nice bounce back there. Even when the floor is low, it's still 8 fantasy points. That's, not that far off from what Romeo Dobbs' floor is as well. So I'm okay with that. And then between Pitts and Fannin, as of right now, I have Fannin higher. I could maybe adjust that if David Njoku does play. But at the end of the day, we do get a lot of passes to the tight ends from Dylan Gabriel. So I don't mind Harold Fannin Jr. over Kyle Pitts. even if we do end up getting David Njoku back. And I will show this comment from Black Lion who said 50 messages and only 32 likes. We can help out by getting her more likes here. And that's also on me. Everyone, most people during live shows, they say, please remember to subscribe and like the video. I conveniently forget to ask that. So thank you for commenting that. I would appreciate it if you guys could like the live and also subscribe if you're not subscribed as well. That would be amazing. From Recon Gamer. 420 Gaming, thoughts on Saquon Barkley? I think he's an interesting buy low. People are in the market for selling him. They're tired, they're frustrated, and at the end of the day, the efficiency is a concern, but the Eagles are going to still try to continue to push him forward and get him going. They're going to make an effort because they know that a big piece of them winning the Super Bowl was the addition and the success of Saquon Barkley on the ground. So they have to get him going. They don't have an option to just say, nah, we're just not going to make this work here. So they're going to try and find a way to adjust blocking, improve the offensive line's cohesiveness, and just kind of push forward and give better opportunities for Saquon Barkley. So he's an interesting buy low for me. I don't think that you have to be panicked too bad on that. From Bob Hope said someone just dropped Garrett Wilson, trying to get him. Can't believe that. Yeah, and this is a reminder, check waivers. Like I just saw in a super flex league, someone had dropped Marcus Mariota, which was, and he was available, dropped this morning, even after we knew that Jaden Daniels was dealing with the injury and then was available for pickup. So just kind of pay attention there, because this is the time of year where bye weeks and injuries and everything, people are panicking and dropping people. Garrett Wilson could play this week, and it doesn't matter who's at quarterback, like at all. Like, mind you, we've seen a game with Garrett Wilson and Tyrod Taylor. I mean, quite frankly, Tyrod Taylor, I always say his name wrong. Sorry, Tyrod. But quite frankly, when we're looking at Garrett Wilson, that's an interesting buy low as well, to the point where someone is panic dropping him. It doesn't matter who is throwing to Garrett Wilson. He's been fantastic all season. The Jets' rest of season schedule is not that bad. Again, I don't care who is at quarterback. He's a clear wide receiver one, and he's coming back from an injury. Might not be this week. At the very least next week there. Sounds like he's close for sure. From Alan C. Oh, dang, you took my advice to do start sit. Now your channel will grow. Thank you, Alan C. From Jermaine Robinson. Joining late here. How much FAAB for Monongai? Have 50 left. I assume it's 50 out of 100. I'm pro spending FAAB. I like to make it rain on the waivers. Like, it is what it is. Like, I can get creative with waivers and pick up players early on speculation as the season goes on and I run out of FAAB. So I wouldn't mind spending a good 10 to 15 on him to get him. I think 10 will probably get it done for you, but shoot somewhere between there to grab him for sure. Just because I genuinely believe his upside is that high, I do want to make sure that I grab him. So I'm not opposed to spending up a little bit on him. The conservative play is probably more like 8. But, who am I to be conservative there? Get your man. Yeah, that's what I would do. From Dennis Clemens, PPR. Who has the safer floor? Flowers or Judkins? Judkins for sure. We did have that couple of game stretch after we had really got off to a fantastic start with him. And I was a little bit worried there for him that maybe Dylan Gabriel was limiting his opportunities here. But we got the good matchup against Miami. And, as long as they don't get massively behind, and the defense is good. So they're, 9 times out of 10, they're going to at least keep it close enough to where they don't have to abandon the run. He's so talented. I do think that Judkins is the safer option there, especially because a lot of times, obviously, as we know, with Lamar Jackson coming back, occasionally they do make it so that, while somewhat decent volume is going to Flowers, they'll get creative and say, okay, we're going to, target when we get to the red zone, we're going to target, DeAndre Hopkins or Rashad Bateman or Devontae Walker, right? So, I mean, it's Zay who is the wide receiver one there, but at the end of the day, the Ravens can do about 10,000 things. My preference there is Judkins for sure, and that he has the safer floor as well. From Owen Daniels, Q Jenkins or DeAndre Swift. So I'm guessing Quinshon Judkins. or DeAndre Swift, PPR. I'm not going to lie there. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which one it is. I want to say that it is Judkins that I have higher, but let me check my rankings here. It is... No, it's Swift that I have higher by like 4 spots there. So they're both top 15 backs for me. Preference there is Swift. He is listed as questionable. I don't think it's a big deal. He's been playing through an injury, and he's been fantastic. So Swift is the one that I would go with. I hate sitting Judkins, but Swift is the one. Thank you so much. Shout out to Coran LMX. Thank you so much. From Alan C. Picked up Alec Pierce over Downs. Yeah, it depends on whether or not Downs clears concussion protocol here. It looks like he's trending that direction. I think they're both interesting candidates. I do lean towards Josh Downs when both are healthy. That's my preference there, but both are interesting with the way that Daniel Jones is dealing. From Bing, good evening to everybody. Waller might be a stash because he comes back during the playoffs. And maybe a start if you don't have a tight end, or am I missing something? No, you're not. He could come back. There's no guarantee that he won't come back off of IR. They didn't say it was a season-ending injury. It's just that based off past experiences with Darren Waller, once the injuries come, they tend to linger with him, and we, end up wanting and hoping that it can work out. But he is older. He is coming off of literally being retired. So the fact that he even was able to play there was kind of miraculous there. The injury history has been very consistent with him. But the Dolphins are not trading him. Are trading Jaylen Waddle. They've been very adamant that Waddle is staying put, and they can't trade him. They're moving on from Tyreek Hill after this season. They do not have any heir apparent in terms of a wide receiver one. If they traded Jaylen Waddle, they would be in a complete teardown to where they have nobody of value on their roster outside of Devon Achane. I genuinely don't think that of all the teams that'll trade a wide receiver, I really don't think they're going to get rid of Jaylen Waddle, just because that is their wide receiver one of the future. Tyreek Hill, they will not be continuing forward with Tyreek Hill. That's the rumors. That's just not my opinion. That's the insider information that is coming out there. From Henry Odom, got offered Judkins, St. Brown, and Rome for my Gibbs and Jefferson. Would you make this trade? Yeah. If you're in need of wide receiver help, I'm okay with this trade. They obviously were getting a downgrade from Gibbs to Judkins, although Judkins I do trust a lot from a top 15 perspective. But St. Brown does have higher upside than Gibson, and quite frankly, Rome, the upside is there for Rome. He's the wide receiver one. We just need Caleb Williams to get himself together. So to get a little bit more in terms of upside at receiver, and then the additional body of Rome as well that has upside, I don't mind that trade. From Bing, what's my record? I play in like 8 leagues, so there's quite a few different records there. There would be one undefeated team, one that's like 5-2, one or another that's undefeated, one that is a really bad dynasty team that's a rebuild. And that one is not doing well. That one is a 2-5, I think. But yeah, I play in quite a bunch of leagues there. Oh, you were asking that for Henry Odom too. Okay. And then from Always Be Great with Vidal Sr. Is now a good chance to sell high on Addison. Thinking of selling my Derrick Henry and Addison for Flowers and St. Brown. I'm hurt at running back. I only have Judkins, Spears, and Aaron Jones. And you're wanting to sell Derrick Henry and Addison. No, now is... You can sell high on Addison if you want. I would not trade away Derrick Henry if I were you, because Derrick Henry is potentially on an upswing here. Particularly with looking at Lamar Jackson coming back. The schedule ahead is fairly friendly in general. So Derrick Henry is a hold for me, not a sell on that one, because the upgrade that you're going to be able to get from Derrick Henry to another running back is not awesome. Yeah, you're trying to sell Derrick Henry. I would not go that direction on that one. From Joseph Massey, Chase Brown, Kamara, or Kittle in full PPR. I lean towards, obviously Kittle actually has the highest upside of those groupings. I kind of lean towards Chase Brown on that one. We've seen an uptick in production with Joe Flacco at quarterback. So we're still not getting the touchdowns, unfortunately, but my lean there is on Chase Brown in that one because I don't love Kamara's matchup. You might want to take the swing with Kittle, but it is a little risky there. From Chris Rochin, any thoughts on picking up Devin Neal? I think it's worth a stash. I don't think that they're going to trade Kamara, so it's purely a handcuff situation, not them being able to trade Kamara and Devin Neal stepping up into the RB1 spot. So in terms of guys, like he would fall below an Ollie Gordon for me. But above, I'm trying to think, what would he be above? Kind of like on the lower tier handcuff area. Again, Alvin Kamara is older, so age in terms of injury is always a possibility, but it's just purely handcuff at this situation. From Tri Lambs, good evening. How do you feel about Marvin Harrison Jr. rest of season? I feel like maybe 2026 is going to be his year. I've tried to hold out hope for Marvin Harrison Jr., but again, it was him earlier in the season. I'm not going to lie. A lot of that was on him, a lot of heady issue kind of plays and lots of drops there. Unfortunately, he pulled himself together. But again, we've got the quarterback concerns around Kyler Murray. Don't know when he will return. And also he has been kind of a little bit unreliable as well. So we're relying on Jakobi Brissett in his absence. I don't feel super positive about it. More so a next week thing. From Henry, or next year thing. From Henry Odom, Nico versus Diggs rest of season. Concerned about Nico. I still have Nico higher rest of season just because Diggs, again, when you're looking at that offense for New England, they've been keeping Diggs around 50% of snaps. They're being very conservative about his usage there, which is also why I like Kayshon Boutte because he actually is the most used receiver in that offense in terms of presence on the field. But Nico's problem, again, we might not have Nico this week because of the concussion, but Nico's problem, unfortunately, is the offensive line for the Texans makes it difficult to consistently get him volume. I still have Nico higher than Diggs rest of season just because, again, the volume for Diggs is not super consistent there. So that is the only issue there for him. From DJ Doomsday, how do you feel about Jordan Mason rest of season when Aaron Jones returns? Does Mason stay RB1 and for how long? Yeah, rest of season, I think that Mason is locked into at least splitting the early down work, maybe a little bit slight majority to him, and then he is the clear favorite at the goal line. So really for Jordan Mason, we're less concerned about Aaron Jones and we're more concerned about the offense getting better as a whole and providing him more goal line opportunities. But yeah, I still think that he is the more stable back over Aaron Jones. From Gwen P, someone offered me Kyle Monongai for Bowers and Henderson, was going to counter with Laporta and Henderson. Because selling Bowers is very aggressive there. Kyle Monongai, quite frankly, for Henderson, feels very even in general. They're trying to get a lot out of you there. I love Kyle Monongai, but for Brock Bowers and Henderson, that's way too much, especially because we are expecting that Bowers should be back after the bye week. We don't have, Geno has been terrible, so the upside hasn't been there. But quite frankly, when we saw Bowers healthy for like 75% of the game in week 1, he looked like the same Brock Bowers and he had high level of production. So the lack of production that he had was because he was playing through an injury. So he sat, should come back healthy, should be good to go. I don't love that trade for you. Let me see here. From Alan C, lost Mike Evans and was offered Olave and Chase Brown for Bijan. What do you think? I'm not sure, but I got BTJ and he's a dud. Yeah. It's still, that's not enough for Bijan. I love Olave. He's been solid there. But that's still not enough there. I know it's frustrating, but if someone's trying to get Bijan from you, they need to be coming to you with a higher end receiver. They gotta come with a top 12 receiver, and don't let someone try and steal that off of you. I get the frustration at wide receiver and needing to get something out there, but you can get more out of Bijan for that, for sure. From Always Be Great with Vidal Senior. Is now a good time to sell high on? Oh yeah, we did this one right here. On that one, and then let's see here. From Easy E, what's up? 5-2, second place. 3 wide receiver, Superflex League, 3 quarterbacks, Knicks. 3 wide receiver in Superflex League. Quarterbacks are Knicks, or quarterback is Knicks. Wide receivers are Quentin Johnston, T-Mac, Dobbs, super flexing, Joe Flacco. Tight end is Kincaid. Kicker is Pinheiro. And then defense is Colts, Seattle. And the bench is Darnold, Tez, Christian Watson, J.K. Dobbins. Thoughts on picking up Pierce? I would not mind, honestly, picking. And again, with Alec Pierce, I do like him, but Josh Downs coming back again would limit his upside. He had been decently reliable in terms of when Josh Downs was on the field, but the upside wouldn't really be there. It would just be more like a reliable, like 8 to 10 fantasy point kind of area there. But I would not be opposed to rostering Pierce over Christian Watson. And that probably says more about what I think about Christian Watson, because again, by the time we get Christian Watson going, assuming we have some kind of ramp up in his play, because he's coming off of a significant injury. So to expect him to come back, like it's not a situation of like, let's say, CD coming back from an, ankle injury. We're talking about Christian Watson coming back from a massive injury. So I would expect, just a little bit of a ramp up there. And by the time we really get him going, we might have Jaden Reed back. So that's my only issue there. So yeah, I would be okay with picking up Pierce and dropping Christian Watson on that one. From DJ Doomsday, thanks for talking about Mason and Jones. Answered your question too. No problem. No problem at all. Let's see here, because we got some repeats. Okay, from Henry Odom, better stream this week, Mims or Leggett. My preference there is Mims this week. I don't trust Xavier Leggett too much, unfortunately. I think that production was very matchup based. I love Mims and the matchup he has this week for sure with Dallas. From Amazon Pancakes, thoughts on when Bucky returns? Feels like he's been out for 3 years. It feels that way because they've given us no timeline, so we don't have anything to kind of look forward to here. All we get is like on Monday or Tuesday, Todd Bowles saying, yeah, he and Godwin are not going to play this week. And it's like, okay, well, if you could give us some kind of indication on timeline, that would be amazing. Which is interesting because they immediately put Mike Evans on IR. So I guess they're kind of hopeful that maybe these ambiguous injuries, but these extended timelines are very, very frustrating, right? But yeah, I hopefully after next week. So let's have next week and then maybe a week 10 return. Is that realistic? I don't know. God, that sounds like forever. It sounds like forever, unfortunately. From Kobe V. Jordan, appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Rest of season, any chance Captain Kirk takes over in Atlanta is a super flex league stash. I think he's a fine stash. Because I don't think that their coaching staff is opposed to benching Penix. And we know that they have held on. Well, one, they've held on to Kirk Cousins because they made him unsellable. The contract is not good. And also there was no advance. And what they were asking for was from rumors was kind of ridiculous. But also they wanted to keep him because they know that he is an adequate fill-in as a veteran quarterback there. And if they think that they can be competitive or they're frustrated with Penix, I would not be shocked there. So, yeah, I think he's worth a hold on there. Ultimately, in Superflex, yeah, we're hoping a lot there, but it's not the worst situation, right? Gwen P, would you pick up Smith and drop Hendo, or would you trade him? Smith is in Brashard. Smith, yes, I would pick if that's Brashard Smith, I would pick up Smith and drop Hendo for sure. I just, from what I'm seeing, I had a video put out with Fantasy Pros on Henderson, and quite frankly, saying drop Henderson, and quite frankly, from the responses, I don't know if the market exists at all for anyone looking to buy Henderson. There's always a market, but based off those comments, and there were a lot, I don't think that anyone is in the market to buy Henderson. So yeah, I think you can just go ahead and drop him and pick up Smith. Yeah, because at the end of the day, Henderson's a handcuff. Unfortunately, I don't see a ton of potential volume from him, unfortunately. Let's see here. And yeah, anyone saying because I'm seeing some Jackson Dart comments for people in case they're struggling at quarterback. Yeah, 100%. If Jackson Dart is out there on waivers, he's a must roster for me. From Josu Rodriguez. Big Bill struggled against the Cowboys. Should I worry about J.K. Dobbins? No, I feel good about J.K. Dobbins. Bill, I'm not so. I'm surprised in the fact that I really did think that he would have a better matchup, better performance against them, as it is a good matchup here. But at the end of the day, I just do not trust that Washington backfield at all. Bill's a very talented running back, but overall, I don't like the consistency and inconsistency of the Washington backfield. J.K. Dobbins, I trust a lot in general. It's a good matchup there. And overall, I do think that we'll also see Bo Nix move the ball well against them, and provide lots of opportunities at the goal line. So no, I feel good about Dobbins. He's a top 15 back for me this week. And then from Alan C says Dart is playing good, but the Eagles might be ready this time. They might, but Dart looked excellent against Denver last week, and Denver is a tougher matchup than Philadelphia. So for sure they'll game plan, and honestly, it might come down to how well that Brian Daboll can game plan to counteract Nick Sirianni there, battle of the coaches and adjustments that they make. But also remember that matchup was really heavily Cam Skattebo, right? So when we're looking at it from that perspective, they might make adjustments, not as much for Jackson Dart, potentially try to make him throw a little bit more and try to limit the production that Skattebo had on the ground there. That might be their approach. From Miles Logan, dropped Travion Henderson for Marshawn Lloyd, was able to pick up Tez Johnson. What's crazy is that I currently have the two best players in fantasy, Bijan and JSN, and I'm losing horribly. Oh man. When you look at it, yeah, I get it. Unfortunately, it sometimes happens where you have those high upside players and it's still not working out due to bad luck there. I do think that dropping Travion was the right move, and then picking up Dez as well. I'd be curious to know what the rest of your team was. If you're still here and want to enter it in the chat, or if not, drop a comment on another video later. I'd love to check it out. From Alinda, which two quarterbacks to play in Superflex if Penix plays, or Penix if he plays, Carson Wentz, Mac Jones, or Dylan Gabriel. Also, with Jaden Daniels not playing, should I start Love or pick up Rodgers? Wait. That's probably a different league. Okay. So the first question of the two quarterbacks that you should play in Superflex between Wentz, Mac Jones, and Dylan Gabriel. And then Penix if he plays. I am kind of concerned about Penix. One, not just because of the injury potential there, but also because I am a bit fearful that this matchup is going to be another one that unfortunately doesn't have high upside. Now, for him, just because do I trust him not to turn over the ball and, cause problems and whatnot? But if he plays, yeah, I think he's a top 20 option And I would take that risk on him, even though he has been very unreliable. My concern is that it might be like a low volume game because maybe Miami isn't able to properly attack their defense because Atlanta has been fairly stout against the pass. So might be just a matchup where you see teams and think in theory this should be a high matchup and it ends up being a lower volume game, unfortunately. But I definitely, if Penix is active, I would play him. And then between Wentz and Mac Jones and Dylan Gabriel, I would lean between Wentz and Mac Jones, and Mac Jones is the one that I have higher. I don't love the matchup with Houston. Their defense has been fairly strong, and I feel like, again, they're going to lean heavily on Christian McCaffrey, but at least you have the possibility of it being touchdown passes to Christian McCaffrey. Odds are pretty high of that. So Penix for sure, and then Mac Jones. And then if Penix doesn't play, it would be Wentz and Mac Jones. I don't want to mess with Gabriel this week, unfortunately. I don't like the matchup with New England. I think that could be one where he unfortunately does generate some turnovers there. Oh my gosh, let's see. Try and speed up here because we have a lot of repeat questions here. And it might just actually be my YouTube that's causing that. From Elia. Darius Slayton over Jerry Jeudy, limited practice. Yeah, if Slayton does play, for sure, 100% over Jerry Jeudy. Again, we just cannot trust the volume, unfortunately, there for Dylan Gabriel. Just the favoritism that he is showing towards the tight ends. He can't get the ball downfield. I don't think he has the arm for it, unfortunately. From Amazon Pancakes, do you like the Eagles defense in a revenge game this week or the Chiefs Monday night game against possibly a no Jane Daniels team in Washington? And yeah, we're preparing for that. There will be no Jane Daniels there. But looking at the Eagles defense in the revenge game or the Chiefs defense, I definitely would go with the Chiefs defense. It looks like we are definitely not getting Jane Daniels there. And Marcus Mariota can run, but he is good for some turnovers too and a pick six every now and then. So, and the Chiefs defense has been so reliable in general. That's my preference there for sure. And then from Elia, wide receiver ruin in shambles, traded away Bill for Travis Hunter, re-ride with the Jaguars. I think that was a perfectly fine trade. We might be on the precipice of seeing Travis Hunter have a little breakout here. I would not be surprised. From P. Weezy, Pittman any good? Kamara for Pittman? Yes, absolutely. And then Kamara for Johnston. I'd be giving up Johnston. I approve of both of those trades. You are getting much more upside at wide receiver with both of them. So I love Pittman. That would be my preference, like by a smidge there, just because he's more reliable than Johnston and has less competition. Johnston has a lot to compete with there, but both of them I think are fine trades for sure. Thank you, JS. Shout out to you. I really appreciate that. From 3P1C fail, hold Brashard or Tajay Smith. My preference there is Brashard for sure. Tajay's upside is probably about 12 fantasy points. Brashard with the receiving upside that he has and the far better offense and when Patrick Mahomes, I think it can develop into more. From Reflect, Love or May, I have May higher this week. Yeah, Nissan says Brashard over Smears. Brashard over Smears. You are 100% right on that, Nissan. From Easy E. Oh, with a super chat for a thank you. I appreciate it. I also love people because Easy E is a very loyal subscriber, always commenting, always watching the videos, and I really appreciate that, guys. I really appreciate the support so much for sure. And also appreciate you guys answering questions in the chat. Thank you so much. And shout out to Gwen P. Thank you. I love you for tuning in. And thank you. Thank you for the wonderful makeup comment there because I see yours in the profile picture. Love it. And you're a makeup artist. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. So that is definitely a comment coming from you for sure. And let's see what else here. Yeah, I'm very interested. I cannot wait for this game. The Packers, yeah, that's obviously, from a fandom perspective, obviously that's very important to me. But it's really going to be interesting to see Aaron Rodgers versus Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur game planning for Aaron Rodgers. It's just going to be so interesting. Let's see here. Looking through some more comments because the chat is super active here. Oh man, we got a kicker question between from Lily Frias. Question is Evan McPherson or Will Reichard? I like both this week. I lean towards McPherson in this matchup here. I think Flacco will move the ball well enough against the defense, but maybe a situation where the Jets defense clamps down a little bit in the red zone. And so, they move the ball well, but there's potentially a lot of field goals there. So yeah, I think I lean towards McPherson on that one. Thank you, Elia. I really appreciate this. CBS better put her on payroll. I appreciate that. From Sal Gabo got offered Puka and Rico for BTJ. Oh, yeah. Wait, Puka for Rico and BTJ. Yes. Yeah. Take that for sure. Immediately. Leave the show now. Go accept that. Well, you don't have to leave the show. Like, keep it running in the background and go accept that trade for sure on that one. 100%. And then from Jay, jumped the gun and made the rookie mistake of dropping Evans before he officially got put on IR. All your IR spots are occupied by Mixon and Ayuk. Yeah, I would pick him up and drop Mixon. I don't have any faith that Mixon is going to play this year. We've got zero timeline on him. At least with Mike Evans, we know that he could be back for the fantasy playoffs. They said, what was it, 8 weeks? Hey, that bounces right up to the middle of the fantasy playoffs and could be sooner. Mike Evans could retire. And Mike Evans is a beast, right? So if anyone can, beat a timeline there on an injury recovery, it's him. So, and we know he's come back from injuries and been amazing. So yeah, I definitely would drop Mixon from IR and put Mike Evans back on there for sure. I think we did this one, but let's see. Darius Slayton or Jerry Jeudy. That would be Darius Slayton if he is available. And then shout out to Nate Deasy. Appreciate you and your positive comment there. Thank you so much. From Reflect, who are you taking? May at home versus Cleveland or Love at Pittsburgh? May for sure. I trust Drake May. With my life at this point. Love Jordan Love, but it's Drake May for sure. From Nissan, trying to trade Jaden Daniels for a wide receiver or running back. Any suggestions? Appreciate it. That's going to have to be. That one is tough to say. That one is going to have to be based on your league preferences and how they view or prioritize quarterbacks. If it's a 1 QB league there, I think you could reasonably trade him for a low-end wide receiver 2 or low-end RB2 on that one. Although probably for a running back, I'd probably lean towards mid-tier area, maybe like a Jaylen Warren or something like that has or maybe like a DeAndre Swift, guys that have that lower perceived value, but do have extreme upside. Debo wide receiver ranking if Terry is active. I have Debo ranked higher if Terry is active this week. So yeah, if both of them are playing, Debo is the one that I have ranked higher. Debo at least had a decent game, one decent game before with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Terry's was okay-ish, but not that great there. I don't love both of them with Marcus Mariota, but Terry I would have higher. And I'm sorry, but Debo I would have higher. And I think, let me see. I think I do have him updated in my rankings already. At no, it's not exactly where it would be. I would have him ranked right now if he's healthy, active, and Terry is also good to go. I would have him ranked around wide receiver 24. Wide receiver 24. So yeah, very startable option. Wide receiver 2, good flex option. From Jabari, what do we do with Jakobi Meyers? Are we holding for a possible trade? So the trade gives you 2 opportunities, right? Because we don't want to roster Jakobi Meyers on the Raiders. The upside is not coming. It's not coming, people. Gino is a problem. you can't, if you are in a position to hold and you don't, let's say you have a positive record, you've got a winning record, you're trending towards the playoffs, you want to hold and see if he gets traded into a better situation. I'm okay with that. If you do have a losing record right now, I would take advantage of this and try to trade him on the trade rumor to another team and get an actual usable asset, because if the trade doesn't happen, you're back to square one with Jakobi Meyers. So he is a trade candidate for me. Try to sell him away to somebody that sees the upside there. Let's see. Yeah, and then someone commented, Nissan Rob said, maybe a Stevenson owner might be interested in Henderson. Yeah, because that's a handcuff there for sure. Let's see here. From Unpopular Meta, Taz or Troy Franklin this week. I have Troy Franklin higher. Matchup is good. Matchup is good for Tez too, but I do have Troy Franklin higher this week just because I do think the Dallas matchup is a far higher upside. Nico for Tataroa from Smitty. It's even. I think I still ultimately prefer the Nico side, but you're probably not going to be able to use him this week. So the more usable asset as of right now is Ted McMillan. We don't really know how long Bryce Young is going to be out and what kind of performance we're going to get from Andy Dalton. It's a mixed bag from him, unfortunately. From John Nunez, would you drop Henderson for Monongai? Yes, I would, for sure. From M. Rojas, Pitts versus Hunter Henry. Who do you prefer rest of season? Rest of season, I prefer Pitts. Hunter Henry's time in the sun was good. It was fun. But the problem is that that was when Drake May was heavily targeting the tight ends. Now he has moved on to a more fairly even distribution. We're getting increased targets to the wide receivers there. And I think we're going to continue to see a bump up to the wide receivers there, which is why I like Kayshon Boutte. So I lean towards Kyle Pitts on that one. Yeah, we do have someone spamming the chat there. And I answered the question, so I don't know why we're going through them, right? So Joseph, Massey, Knicks or Daniel Jones? Knicks this week. I know he's a frustrating one to try and predict, but it's a good matchup here. So we lean that direction for sure. Miles Logan, taking a look at your team. You've got Kayla, Bo Nix. Oh, wow. You got Nico, Jason, Keon, Cedric Tillman, Rome Madunze, Tess, Kayshon Boutte, Bijan, and Jordan Mason, Ollie Gordon. It's a well-rounded team. You might need to make a little move there at, in terms of upgrading or maybe getting an additional handcuff there that can have some stronger RB2 value there. But I like Jordan Mason rest of season as well. So, yeah. Shout out to P. Weezy for tuning in. I appreciate you for watching too. And shout out to you for the super chat. Thank you as well. Thank you for the super thanks. I appreciate you tuning in. You guys are awesome. From Miles Logan, 91. Rest of your team is the rest of your team is Marshawn Lloyd, Zach Charbonnet, and then your tight ends are Laporta, Chig, and Theo Johnson. Overall, very well rounded for sure. And you've got Charbonnet. So no, I think you're fine at running back also. Sucks for Kenneth Walker, but yeah. Rest of season, KJ, Woody Marks or Travion Henderson. Woody Marks for sure on that one. We talked about him earlier in the live. Upside is far higher for him. He can, take over that backfield for sure. And at the very least, we know we have a favorable split where he has receiving upside. Yeah, that's my preference there. Easy E, I like this question. Who gave me my love of football? Yeah, I used to watch, actually my whole family, really. But, used to watch football a ton with my dad. My grandfather, he was a high school coach. He coached high school football and high school basketball, primarily women's basketball. So yeah, we're a big sports family. He coached everything. I think he even coached track and whatnot. But yeah, we're a big sports family for sure. Then from Angelo. Pinto, need your expertise on the worst 4 wide receivers to start because of injuries and bye weeks. Here they go. Need to between Leggett, Pierce, DK, and when I say DK, I always say Chimray DK because you guys don't know that are not watching the live. If you're listening on the podcast, that might sound like DK Metcalf, but that's Chimray DK. And then Darius Slayton. Oh, that's a good list. It feels like we're gonna get so a lot of this hinges on Calvin Ridley, right? Because I can swing back to Chimray DK if Calvin Ridley is out. I don't love Leggett this week. I think it was very matchup based there. And outside of last week, he's just been incredibly underwhelming. Pierce is stable. And then I like Slayton a lot if he if he is active. So if he returns this week, Slayton for sure. We're locking that one in. And then it's close between Pierce and DK. But I think I lean towards Pierce being a more stable option on that one. But DK has the higher upside for sure. But I lean towards Slayton and Pierce on those two for you. Legette's the man that I just don't trust. Hey, if he goes off, it's just not worth it, right? Because of the extremely low floor. From John B, sorry for tuning in late if you already covered it, but is Devin Neal worth a pickup over Brashard or worth dropping Brashard Smith? No, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, Kendra was getting, occasionally it looked like he was having some decent standalone value there, but not enough to where you felt super comfortable, and the offense was still generally shaky, right? Even though Spencer Rattler has done, hey, shout out to Spencer Rattler. He's done the best that he can and has been a decently-ish competent quarterback until last week was an ugly showing. But no, I would definitely rather roster Brashard Smith. Again, on that one, Alvin Kamara pretty much nixed the potential of a trade value for him. Unfortunately, he's going to be there. He refused to get traded, apparently. Threatened to go somewhere and sip pina coladas. So he is not a trade candidate anymore, unfortunately. From Bob Hope, would you drop Jakobi Meyers or Dobbs for Garrett Wilson? Yes. Are people dropping Garrett Wilson? Oh man. If people are because this is the second comment that I've seen. Someone else said that Garrett Wilson was dropped to waivers. If people are dropping Garrett Wilson, one, absolutely pick up by any means necessary. I would drop both of those, especially Jakobi Meyers. He would be gone off of my squad so fast for Garrett Wilson. That also means he's a good buy low right now. So put in your trade offers for Garrett Wilson. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. He is zero competition at receiver. He is the target hog in that offense. He is a 10 target minimum kind of guy. Like, man, yeah. Lily Frias, yeah, Kyle Monongai or Henderson. It was Monongai on that one. From Brendan, would you trade Monty and Benson for Rashad and Marks? Oh, I don't know. And you have wait, you have Bucky. See, I should have read the rest of the question. Yes, you have Bucky. I would 100% do that for sure. Yeah, and you're starting Brashad and Devin Neal. But long term, the value. Long term, the value of you getting your handcuff there with Bucky is going to be extremely significant for you, for sure. Yeah, I would go that direction for sure. Alpocalypse. I love your username. Tet plus ETN for Bucky. Man, that's a lot for a player that we don't know when he's coming back. I don't know about that one. I can't advocate for that one just because we don't have an actual timeline on that one. From Brendan, my running backs are and your running backs are ETN, Monty, Knight, Hampton, Bucky. No, wait. So your running backs. So you have Bucky. So you're trying to trade Bucky away for Tet and ETN. Oh yeah, I read that as you trying to get Bucky for that. No, if you're trading away Bucky and getting Tet and ETN, I don't mind that at all. Yeah, for sure. I always like the give and get. It makes it less confusing for me. I get confused when I read sometimes. From Christian Torres. Hello, ma'am. Would like a second opinion. I am 3 and 4. I just traded Bijan in London for Achan, Warren, Ladd, and Wandale. How are we feeling? That's a fine trade. Look, I love that's enough for Bijan. And Yeah, London has high upside, but the consistency has been an issue for him. And Ladd is on a little bit of an upswing here. So, and Justin Herbert is throwing for aggressive volume. Overall, you got a nice haul for that, and it is going to help you in terms of filling out your roster better. So, I don't mind that. I think that ultimately the person that getting Bijan is very, very happy. But if that works out for you in your roster, I'm not mad about it. Yeah. From Burka, start 2, flex, Diggs, Tet, Jaylen Warren, PPR. That is definitely Jaylen Warren for sure. And then between Tet and Diggs, I kind of still lean towards going with Tet on that one. Yeah, Easy A made the comment. It's time for me to go watch Survivor. Yeah, I've got TV shows that I gotta watch. They're recorded and they're good to go here. I do want to get through these last questions. We're almost done here. I made it to the end. From Kit Fisto, Rashad White, Judkins, or JCM. Starting 2 running backs are HN and Jordan Mason. Well, I mean, I would, so Achane for sure is your starting, but I would start both Rashad White and Jordan Mason, or Rashad White and Judkins over Jordan Mason. I have them higher this week. I like you need to play both White and Judkins for sure. They're both top 15 backs for me. Mason is a little bit further back. And then for Nissan Rob, would you trade Jaden Daniels for Garrett Wilson? Yes, I would. I would do that for sure. That's how passionately I am pro Garrett Wilson. And then from Avery, 2 and 5, considering trading Saquon. Is that a good move or should I hold off? Not sure what I could get for him. I think that's a fine move for you because you can get a good haul for him at this point. Saquon is not a bottom of the barrel, buy low type of candidate. He's a good sell right now to get back good value here for him. So yeah, put him on the trade block, get something of value, multiple players of value to try and help you out at other positions as well. Because you've got ETN and you've got Mason. You're perfectly fine on that. And you've also got Aaron Jones. So that adds a little bit there. So yeah, try and upgrade and get some higher upside. You lost Amari and Hampton. Yeah, I don't mind that at all for sure. To sell Saquon to try and get some more bodies on your team that can help. And then between Apocalypse, Flex, Tet McMillan, or Kayshawn Booty, I'm still going to flex Tet. I know we're at a high frustration point, right? And we got Andy Dalton at quarterback. So that means a lot of things. But I will say this with Andy Dalton at quarterback, it's either going to be extremely high upside and he's going to give Tet McMillan 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, or it's going to be like 2 catches for 15 yards. It's one or the other. There's no in between with him. And I like that about Andy Dalton. You give us all or you give us nothing. But that's it. And then one more from Kit, Fisto, Kelsey, or Kraft. I have Kraft higher. But that wraps things up. I appreciate you all tuning in. Very active chat today. Friendly reminder, please be sure to like the like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. I'm live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST taking your questions live. And I do stick around until all the questions are answered. Technically, the show was supposed to end like 47 minutes ago. And I got stuff to do. I got kids to put to bed, TV shows to watch and articles to write as well. So it's going to be a busy night here, but I had fun with you guys. Awesome crowd. As a reminder, this is a podcast. So if you could please subscribe to the podcast. The Dear Miss Fantasy podcast is available on all platforms. Shout out to Player Profiler for being the network that our podcast is through. And if you're interested in following me anywhere else, you can find me at It's Terra Time anywhere, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that good stuff. But other than that, I appreciate you all tuning in. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in any of the videos as well. And I can answer answer them there. And other than that, I hope you all have a good week. Good luck with your lineups. I hope everything works out perfectly. I will see you all here again next week.